Pete Kern's a really interesting individual, and he was rather eccentric in his life. He was born in Ohio in 1860. He lived kind of a rough, early existence, but he made his way to El Paso around 1880, and 1880 is a time when El Paso is about to explode both geographically and population-wise. My name is Robert Diaz. I'm the immediate past president of the El Paso County Historical Society. I think you can see Peter Kern in a couple ways. The first is that he really does embody this venture capitalist pioneer that was very popular in the late 19th century in America. But at the same time, I think you can also see him as Peter Kern, the El Pasoan. When he came to El Paso, he actually was a jeweler in the town, and he had a store in downtown El Paso. But he went broke within a few years. He lost his fortune here in El Paso, and he traveled to Alaska. Now, he did make money again when he was up there. He became rather profitable. And it was after an interaction with a fortune teller that he believed he needed to come back to El Paso. And so he returned around 1913. Kern was an eccentric individual, and he wanted to make sure that his neighborhood was considered popular, that it was considered regal. There was this idea that you could live amongst the Franklins and the nature that surrounded the area. Kern was very, very moved by mysticism, and that is evident in the design of the neighborhood, or at least the gate that entered the neighborhood that's now famous and attached to his name. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that at the very least, a lot of thought and his personal beliefs went into the formation of that arch, especially when you think of the symbolism involved. Of course, the swastika, which when this arch was constructed, was not connected with Nazi Germany, but rather had a very peaceful sort of connotation. Arches, to sort of introduce someone to a neighborhood, were not that common in El Paso at the time. Certainly Sunset Heights didn't have one, Five Points and Manhattan Heights didn't have one. So this would have been a unique fixture in El Paso at this time. And in terms of the arch itself, a lot of it dealt with this notion of brotherhood, this idea that we're supposed to be collectively engaged as a people. After a certain amount of time, he lost his money again. Kern's life was never particularly easy. It seemed to have these peaks and valleys, right? Kern learned tenacity and grit from an early age. He did become a gardener for that area for a time, and why he did it, it's unclear. You know, you could possibly say it's because that was his way of making money. But I think you could also see it as another example of this tenacity, right? You know, yes, his fortunes fell, but he didn't give up. He continued to find ways to survive and to make money and to stay close to this area that he loved. He wound up dying in Arlington, Texas. He leaves behind quite a legacy. And again, Kern Place is one of those quintessential El Paso neighborhoods that is beautiful not only for the architecture and for the environment, but just for the sort of feeling of community that it embodies. You know, I think, you know, if it's anything, I think it's the uniqueness of his character, right? I mean, I didn't realize this interest he had in Eastern religions. I didn't realize his sort of craftiness and his artistic background. I didn't realize that he was a jeweler. You know, he wore so many different hats throughout his life, and I think as just an individual, he's a very interesting person to study, and he's someone that I actually want to know more about.
Me too.
Yeah.
Only in El Paso is produced by KCOS, El Paso PBS, in collaboration with local filmmakers. Only in El Paso is made possible with support from El Paso Museums and Cultural Affairs Department, working to develop a world-class arts community in El Paso. El Paso Electric, proud to be your local utility. Visit El Paso, raising the profile of El Paso to attract visitors near and far. And PBS Digital Studios, original content that explores science, arts, culture, and beyond.